And we're back. I'm Tad Goodwin. This is Greg Crawford. This is the Friday News Dump for April 12th, 2013. This segment's being sponsored by Ted Green Ford here in Stockbridge, Vermont. It's the oldest Ford dealership in the country. Fred, the guy who works in the service department, will do
a prince among men.
Will do a great job on your truck. And we want to really thank them for their sponsorship because they're helping make this possible and making us rich.
Comparatively speaking, as opposed to the average dumpster diver.
Thanks, Fred.
So anyway, it has been noted that the beloved Margaret Thatcher has gone to her reward at the age of 87. She died from a stroke, poor dear. And in her later years, she was, as they delicately phrase it, bereft of her senses, which is too bad.
Really?
But
so she had that in common with Ronald Reagan.
Yes. But not everyone was heartbroken to see Maggie's passing. There were, in fact, people in various cities, especially cities where there had been coal mines and there were a lot of coal workers, who were dancing in the streets saying, "Hi ho, the witch is dead." They didn't like Maggie very much, and there are a lot of people in the world that thought Attila the Hen was a thoroughly unpleasant person. But be that as it may, she was a world leader, for better or for worse, and she is no longer with us.
You have to give her credit for being the first woman prime minister.
Yeah, the only woman prime minister and the longest reigning prime minister in the 20th century. But she was not a very nice person.
I know. She doesn't bring credit to the females of the world.
And now this brings us to one of my favorite segments of the show, or parts of the show. Greg is going to do his opinionating, his what we call affectionately the rant, the weekly rant, and he's going to talk about psychopaths, the psychopaths among us.
And be careful who you sit next to. You never can tell. Now, a nation is not a static entity. The principles that guided America's establishment may be enshrined on a piece of parchment under glass, but a nation is made up of people. And the people that imagined, fought for, and built America, our founding fathers, were intelligent and principled men. Sadly, there were no founding mothers. America would be a very different and probably much better place if there had been. Like all human beings, the founding fathers were flawed individuals and the products of their times. But hey, their intentions were honorable. But like all groups of human beings, this new nation was also made up of some very unprincipled men, men consumed by greed, avarice, and malice. The circumstances, both physiological and environmental, that produce people with such diseased minds have been studied at length and in depth for centuries, but the people who control the dissemination of such knowledge are, all too often, just such people themselves, and do not want their psychoses exposed for all to see. Complete dominion over the lives of others is harder to achieve when those you seek to subjugate know that you're a lying psychopath with the conscience of a sewer rat. Oh, it's not impossible, but the mantle of noble savior and protector loses a great deal of credibility when it's soaked in the blood of innocent children. Hey, just ask Dick Cheney. Now, those whose dreams are not troubled in the least by the ruthless methods they employ to attain wealth and status seek to protect their exalted positions through the purchase of politicians, with a singular aversion to empathy of any sort. In the Senate, they have installed a constipated tortoise that blocks the passage of any meaningful legislation with endless threats of filibuster. In the House, a venomous orange snake that cries on cue has blithely acknowledged that undermining any initiative offered by the President Obama is more important than the welfare of anyone's constituencies, even if that initiative was one they had previously supported and even introduced themselves. A few years ago, when confronted with the fact that his opposition to President Obama's deficit reduction plan would cost thousands of Americans their jobs. Speaker Boehner's response was, so be it. Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary defines the psychopathic personality as an emotionally and behaviorally disordered state characterized by a clear perception of reality, except for the individual's social and moral obligations, and often by the pursuit of immediate personal gratification in criminal acts, drug addiction, or sexual perversion. Social and moral obligation should be expanded to include the aforementioned lack of empathy for others and a cavalier disregard for honesty and truth. Does that sound like anyone you regularly see grasping for sound bites? So, we got an emperor's new clothes thing happening here. Anyone with the brains of a potted plant knows that the lunatics are running the asylum on Capitol Hill. But no one with the wherewithal or the authority to make this clear to the American public will come right out and say so. Almost no one. There are, the eloquent and fearless Mickey Z's, Chris Hedges, and Glenn Greenwalds of the world, but their congregation is too often limited to those in the choir. Such people have a sizable internet following, but even those knowledgeable about critical issues usually only visit sites that reinforce their beliefs. I'm guilty of that myself. And so the broader public does not benefit from their insights. And you sure as hell ain't going to see them on network nightly news shows that only broadcast sanitized versions of events approved for public consumption by the shadowy minions of corporatism. But just think of what it would be like if Al Gore had not invented the internet. I'm just kidding, Al, just kidding. I know what you really said. Anyway, the internet community has dealt some serious setbacks to the denizens of the dark side. That's why conservatives keep trying to throttle the internet in an effort to muzzle dissent. We can't have every Tom, Dick, and Harry going around knowing shit. It's bad for business. And the other shoe drops. If anything is bad for business, it gets silenced, one way or another. For instance, several red states are considering, and quite a few have already passed, laws that prohibit exposing illegal and or unethical treatment of animals on factory farms. And the industrial farms that basically all of our food comes from, thus making it a crime to report a crime. Hell, Monsanto tried to make it illegal to even criticize them, and baby, they got more to criticize than most. Well, at least they got the Monsanto Protection Act passed by weaseling it into a critical spending bill, and a few too many politicians normally regarded as good guys held their noses and voted aye, claiming that they couldn't let the government shut down. Wait a minute. You mean it's been opened up all this time? Who knew? But here's the point. Psychopaths have been running things for far too long. In fact, they've run things right into the ground, enriching themselves while impoverishing the rest of us. And now we're fast approaching the edge of the political, economic abyss, and these batshit crazy dirtbags have the pedal to the metal. They have every intention of destroying the country so they can rebuild it as their own idyllic psychotopia. But we will not be invited.
Well,
as Deborah mentioned, in addition to Uruguay, the French Senate Tuesday adopted Article 1 of Bill 344, which legalizes same-sex marriage. That's a preface to, or at least I want to fit that in before this cool science story. Scientists in China Thursday found a rare dinosaur egg. That's a fossilized egg that contained a fossilized embryo inside.
oh, cool.
And totally cool. Totally. That
Is
must.
it DNA?
I don't think. I think the DNA deteriorates.
Yeah, it's probably fossilized too.
But it's still pretty nifty. Pretty cool.
And that might even be one of the dinosaurs that early Christians were riding. As evidenced in the theme park in Tennessee, which I only found out recently that a company that I used to work for built all of those animatronic dinosaurs, and I was thinking, oh my God. Oh, boys, what were you thinking?
Hey,
And they're 4 miles down the road from us here. I won't mention the name because I don't want to cause any trouble for anyone.
It's right down the road from Dollywood, isn't it?
No, I'm talking about the company I used to work for. It's
No,
right down the road.
I'm talking about the theme park.
Well, it may very well be. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. What a strange world we live in. And a study found that carefully timed sounds played during sleep can enhance memory, which is interesting. And a study found that carefully timed sounds played during sleep can enhance memory.
Nice, Greg.
So all that stuff is not working for you.
Well, memory is one of the first three things to go. I forget what the other two are.
Russian President Vladimir Putin, or however you say it, today unveiled a new $50 billion drive for the country to preserve its status as a top space power, including the construction of a brand new cosmodrome to fly humans to space by the end of the decade.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Well, they're the only game left in town. Everybody else just, said, okay, we ran out of gas and we're not going to send our shuttles up or anything else. So you don't get to space or back from space unless you're going Russian Express here. Yep. So good luck with that. An ESPN investigation claims that 12 Auburn University football players tested positive for synthetic cannabis.
What's that?
In the, well,
Marinol.
It's marijuana that's plastic? I don't know. Synthetic pot, in the 2011 season. And that the school's athletic department kept the test results confidential. Big surprise there. The investigation also reveals widespread use of the drug among members of Auburn's 2010 national championship team. So, pot makes you play better football.
I'm appalled. I can't believe it.
Oh, God.
Oh,
It's better for
man.
you.
What is the world coming to?
Than cortisone.
It is strange, strange world.
Are you going to talk about Annette or should I?
Well,
Oh,
Annette Funicello was remembered by old farts like myself as the loveliest of the original Mouseketeers. Back in the 50s, as a young and impressionable man or boy, I just loved her. Oh, God, it was just, I thought Annette was the hottest thing
Well, she
since
was.
sliced bread.
What were you saying about her belly button?
Oh yeah, well, when she was making these beach blanket bingo
Blanket
movies
bingo.
in the late 50s and early 60s, she would wear a two-piece bathing suit,
But it covered her belly.
but she would not wear a bikini because she would not have her belly button exposed. Maybe there was too much hair growing out of it. I don't know. But
Oh, wow.
ew. But anyway, either her and her producers or a combination of both said, "Oh no, we cannot
She
possibly."
has her limits.
She has her limits. I mean, she'll make beach blanket bingo movies, but she won't wear a bikini. But oh, Annette, we loved you, dear, and I'm sorry to see you go. And another person has died today. Jonathan Winters has gone to comedy heaven, and he was funny. He was funny. He had great characters that he invented. He didn't do jokes. He hardly ever did jokes, but the characters that he invented were people that everyone could identify with. And what is interesting, people used to say that he's always on, he's always on stage. And the fact of the matter is that, they say the world's a stage. Well, his world was a stage because his imagination was his world from the time that he was a little itty bitty kid. He spent, most of his time alone, and he would sit up in his room and he would invent these characters and he would interview himself. He'd be one character and then he'd be another. I may be schizophrenic, but at least I have each other. And he was a really, really funny guy. But I think that might explain to a certain degree why people always thought he was in performance mode, because his entire life was a performance. And he had a couple of shows, but they weren't really all that successful. And he made movies. He was great in A Mad, 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 Mad World. He was hilarious, but he was very, very unpredictable. He was an ad-libber. He loved to just riff on whatever was happening that very instant. So he was a great guest on, the Johnny Carson show or the Steve Allen show, or Jack Parr, who was the guy that did the Tonight Show before Johnny Carson. And he was Robin Williams' idol. He was his Jonathan Winters was his hero. He absolutely loved him. And it's sad when we see somebody who is such a singular talent finally, die. What a shame.
How old was he?
87.
He lived a good life.
There's a lot of 87-year-olds biting the dust this past week. It's
May they all R.I.P.
One can only hope.
Jonathan Winters seems hilarious.
And that's it for the Friday News Dump for April 12th, 2013. Reporting to you from beautiful Gaysville, Vermont. I'm Tad Goodwin. This is Greg Crawford. Join us next week. Thank you very much.
And good night.